Hello and welcome. It seems to have been a long time coming, so I want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you who has asked, questioned, queried, and subscribed without me having a single video. It really does mean a lot because it's a really heartwarming feeling knowing that people actually would like to know your opinions and your point of view and things like that. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody. Now this is going to be a bit of a stop-start kind of video with it just being my first one, so I do apologise for any kind of gaps, anything that just may take longer than a normal YouTuber, considering even though I've been around the sphere, this is actually obviously my first video, so I appreciate your patience with this video. First of all, I just kind of want to run through a few things of what the themes of this channel, obviously by the shirt that I'm wearing and the background and everything, it's fairly obvious it's a Leeds United podcast. But from time to time, I do have other interests. I know it may shock people, but I do have other interests and things that I find interesting to talk about, and things that I think should be talked about more. So maybe mental health, social issues, especially surrounding women. So obviously, if those aren't your cup of tea, absolutely no problem. If you just want to hear about the football, no problem whatsoever. A few things that I would say is that I would like everybody to be respectful. If you disagree with me or disagree with anybody that I have on my channel in the future, that's no problem at all, but please be courteous and respectful. And also, if you disagree with my opinion or anybody else that I have on my channel, specifically because of their gender, and don't have an argument that isn't just incredibly basic and boring of the fact of why are you even watching football, you know, name calling because of gender, those kind of comments won't be tolerated and will simply be removed. It's not something that I want. If you want to disagree with me, no problem. Let's have a discussion about it. Let's have a back and forth. But if you want to disagree with me simply because of the fact that I'm female, please go get a life. This is not the channel for you, because I am very much female and I have opinions. So if you're clicking on this channel and viewing it and you take the time to comment something derogatory, that just helps me, but you won't be interacted with. You will simply be removed. So go get your kicks somewhere else. Now that we've got the kind of boring admin out of the way, I just want to do a quick review of my personal feelings towards the season so far. It seems like such a long time ago when the Portsmouth game, obviously 3-3, exciting. I've written a couple of notes, some really basic headers on my opinion on those games. Obviously the Portsmouth one was exciting. It kind of had flashbacks for me of obviously the frustrating Cardiff game last season, but it also reminded me of the Liverpool-Leeds 4-3 game when we arrived back in the Premier League. Really good back and forth. We were the underdogs, and it was just exciting. Obviously, we had Rutter still, and that kind of creative spark, but we were incredibly defensively frail that game, which then moves on to the Middlesbrough one, but the less said about that game, the better. The next league game we had, obviously, was the 0-0 with West Brom. Incredibly boring, but needed game. We needed to prove to ourselves, to the players, to the fans, that we could actually get through a game without conceding a goal. I think Farke did the right thing in terms of we just kind of had to stop the rot, considering how stoic we were in defence last season. The fact that we'd shipped 6 goals at home was something that we needed to stop immediately. And obviously, looking back at that point, it's a good point. We're the only blemish on West Brom's season so far. That could be an incredibly vital point when we're talking about the end of the season. You know, we know how when we dropped silly points last season, we came to rue those chances by the end of it. Then that moves us on to the Sheffield Wednesday game. It was a game that we grew into. We had a few really good chances, actually, but I thought Sheff Wednesday did a pretty good job with keeping us out in terms of we should have had more that game. But we got back to scoring. We got back to, back-to-back clean sheets. Really, really important. And we all know it's something that Daniel Farke kind of prides himself on, certainly did last season. I know at the end of that game, I don't know whether this stat still stands. I should have probably fact-checked it. But we were the team in the top 4 divisions of English football that had the most clean sheets in the calendar year of 2024. Again, not quite sure whether that's still the case, but I think that just goes to emphasise how important Daniel Farke sees clean sheets as. He's very much he seems like the kind of manager that is looks at the case of you can't lose a game if you don't concede, which we can see from both ways. Sometimes it can be incredibly frustrating, and other times it's helped us, get that point, well, those 3 points over the line. Moves us on very nicely to the Hull game, which I thought in the first half it was a pretty boring game. The worst thing is I was watching it. I was on holiday, and I had to watch it with a Hull commentary, and I hadn't quite realised how much I don't like the Hull accent. It's something different. It really is. I don't think I've ever heard the word "rerd on" said quite as many times as I had then. Yeah, not something that you want to hear on a daily basis. Very glad I don't live near there. Then I think obviously going into the international break, we had a lot of expectation on us back to back. Well, 3 clean sheets in a row, 4 goals. Things were starting to cook, and then everybody left, and everybody went on international duty, and the people who didn't were either new or they weren't part of the first team kind of setup. So it must have made for incredibly frustrating training. I do think that we have to think about that when it comes to that Burnley game, that they had, I believe, 4 out of their squad on international duty, whereas I believe we had 14, 15. I know we were definitely in double digits, but I'm going to say 14. So we had quite a few people out on international duty, meaning that there was chance for injury, which obviously we had a few concerns when it came to Willie Nonto, Max Verver, although he's not that much of a loss at this moment in time. He's got a lot to prove. And I don't think we can underestimate how important those 2 weeks will have been for Scott Parker, and he executed his game plan brilliantly. There's no denying that. He frustrated every single one of us. He frustrated our players. He frustrated, the atmosphere was flat at Elland Road from, obviously, I wasn't at the game. I was just watching, being an armchair fan at home. But the atmosphere seemed really lackluster. And then obviously we've got the frustration of Joseph miss, Nonto miss, then having all of the possession in the second half and doing very little with it, which then obviously has sparked a massive backlash. And that's something that I am going to get into. But overall, I'm fairly happy with the season. I'm certainly not overreacting, thinking that we need to throw it all in the bin and that we need to get rid of Farke, that we need to throw the players under the bus. I'm not there. We're still doing better than we were this time last season. we have a lot more first team members that understand Farke, and that were part of that good run in the first few months of 2024. But that doesn't mean that I'm ecstatic with it. I'm happy enough. I'm not overreacting. I'm not baying for blood or anything like that. I just think we do need to do better. But the league isn't going to be as much of a runaway season as it was. There's not going to be 4 teams that are absolutely flying above everybody else. I really don't believe that. I think it's a lot more competitive. And when you have a more competitive league, which most people have said that it is going to be more competitive, and then as soon as it is, and those people around us take points off us, we all lose our heads. We all go ballistic, because all of a sudden, exactly what we've all said was going to happen, i.e. it's going to be more competitive, more teams are going to take points off one another than they did last season. As soon as that happens, that's it. Sack Farke, 49ers out, get rid of all of them. We don't know what we're doing. It just made a mountain out of a molehill. And that's my opinion. If you disagree, please feel free to discuss in the comments below. But that's my opinion on it so far. Next thing, which I don't know, I feel a bit big-headed saying it, but I do think that it's something that we do have to address, is the curse of the cup final. We saw it last season. So many teams recorded their biggest ever attendance of the season when we came into town. And now that there's, obviously last year it was quite a unique situation, and all 3 relegated teams had spent 3 or more seasons consecutively in the Premier League. So you could argue that there were rivals to being the biggest team in the Championship, whereas now, obviously we've got competitors with, your Sunderland and Middlesbrough and, other teams similar. But I'm going to be an arrogant Leeds fan. Come for me. We're the biggest team in this league, and the fact that attendances often demonstrate it, the fact that last season when Blackburn came to Leeds and beat us, they then lost dramatically by quite a considerable amount, I believe, the following game. Because it's like everybody uses all of their energy reserves to play us. And then the game afterwards, their energy levels, their concentration, their kind of resilience just, nosedives. So I really do think that there is something in the whole cup final attitude. And I think it's something that Daniel Farke is going to have to overcome, because, and this isn't meaning to insult any Norwich fans that happen to have stumbled across onto this channel, but I don't think he's faced it before. And I've said that for, quite a while. I think I said it on both Joe Blackburn and Joe Wayman's channels, that this is his biggest job. He hasn't had a job as big as Leeds United, and Norwich aren't as big as Leeds United. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. And the pressure of being the cup final of a lot of teams in a league is a lot more than he will have ever had to handle. And I think that actually quite leads me on to, it's like I've done this before, onto my, are we mentally strong enough? I think, obviously, we saw a lot of mental fragility at the end, or after March at least, of last season. And that's something that has to be a balance of the manager being a good man manager, which I think we can all agree that Daniel Farke, one of his strengths is his ability to man manage. But it's something we need to see more of when it comes to important times in the season, i.e. the run-in after the last international break, games straight away after an international break, recovering from a loss. So it'll be really, I just want to timestamp it. I'm recording this before the Cardiff game. So it'll be interesting to see whether we come back fighting and whether these players can mentally handle the knockback of losing at home. And in a bizarre turn, I actually think maybe losing that home game in the long run might actually help, because when it comes to the last season, obviously we were unbeaten until the last 2 games of the season, and we've seen that this year, before he left, Rutter came, did a YouTube video and said, that he saw what people were writing online. And so we know players, especially this younger generation of players, use social media, know social media. We know that the 49ers use social media. So when it comes to knowing that we've got a record, an unbroken record of not losing at home, that pressure mounts up. And now that we've been beaten at home in a cup and in the league, that removes that pressure. We don't have that weighing on our shoulders anymore this season. We don't have that. We've already lost, so we don't have an unbeaten record. Currently we're unbeaten away, so I don't want that to change on Saturday. I feel like I've cursed us now. But I do think that not having a record is a good thing. I think that it frees up the players mentally to just focus on the game and not have outside pressures of, we haven't conceded this amount of goals, or we haven't lost at home, or we haven't lost away. I think when all of those have gone, I think it frees players up to just play. Another thing that I want to talk about, speaking about mentality-wise, I think that the players have to step up. They're all grown-ups. Even Mateo Joseph, who is obviously incredibly young, he's still a grown-up. He's still getting paid a very, very nice wage. And with that comes the mental responsibility of being able to play and being able to deliver a performance. Even if you're not necessarily delivering 20 goals a season, you have to deliver the performance. And all of these players need to step up. I think we are struggling for leaders on the pitch. Love him or hate him, Cooper was a leader at Leeds United and somebody that probably did kind of jeer them up in the changing rooms. Even to a certain extent, Archie Gray was. I remember that Cardiff game, the first game of the season, when Somerville scored the equaliser. We still had a few minutes left of injury time, and he took the ball straight away off Somerville and was like, no, we need to get on. We could win this game if we just crack on. We need that. We need players across the pitch to step up. You don't have to have the title of captain or vice captain or anything like that. You have to have heart. And we all know, I think one of the things that makes the Bielsa team so special is the fact of how much heart those players had. And that's why we love them. When we look at them from a technical point of view, they're okay, but most of them were not anything special, but they got leads. And that in the Championship, when you're understanding these rivalries and why all these teams hate Leeds so much, that's really important. So I really hope that the players are taking that mental side of things to heart, and that they're understanding that it's not just the skills, it's the mentality that, it's a long season, very long season, especially when it's 2 games every week and it's freezing cold and it's wet and it's windy and it's miserable and you're having to travel, a couple of 100 miles to get to games and back again. So that's something that we really need to see improve from a managerial sense and also a player sense. They do have the responsibility on their own shoulders. It doesn't just go to the manager for getting the best out of them. It gets to the players for being responsible for their own feelings and for their own capabilities. So I think that's really important. And then that leads me on to the next one, which is, do we have the right players? And this is something that I have said before, and it's something that sometimes people scoff at when I say is that we have players that I think would actually do better in the Premier League than they are currently doing in the Championship. Obviously, we've got a lot of, foreign players that might not have played in England or in specifically in the Championship before, and the Championship is a whole other level, and we need players that have the skills that can get you out of the Championship. A lot of the teams that do well are ones that do well at set pieces, which we all know it's like a big kind of like, we don't do set pieces of any shape or variety, and we struggle to defend them as well. So I think having the right players, and for me, I think we needed to get another number 9. Yes, we probably needed to get a 10 as well. I just want to see a bit more height, and this is coming from somebody who's vertically challenged herself, but I really do think you can be more compact in the Premier League because you're also more protected in the Premier League. You've got VAR, so any fouls can be spotted by VAR and can be looked at, whereas if the ref doesn't see it, it doesn't happen, and even when the ref does blatantly see it, i.e. the penalty we should have had against Burnley, it doesn't always get given because, again, there is no intervention. It is simply whatever the ref and the linesman see, and that's that. I think that these players are enough, but I do want us to go out in January. I'm not completely happy with the squad. I think the 49ers are stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to purchasing players and balancing the books. But I do want them to go and spend in January if we are struggling. If we need that something else, which I think we needed in January 2024. I think if we'd have gone out and bought a couple of players, even just to add a little bit of competition, then we maybe could have, done more. Maybe we wouldn't have finished 3rd. Maybe we would have finished 2nd. Maybe we would have finished 3rd and we would have won in the playoffs because we had, competition for roles. We had people who could step up. We actually had midfielders. So yeah, that's my opinion. Is I'm not quite sure whether we have the right players, but with the league being weaker, I think we have enough to still do it. I don't think there is the excuse of not having enough. I think we have enough, but it's just on that line. It's not more than enough. It's not less than enough. It's just enough. This next one is a little bit of a mick take. It comes with a massive trigger warning because lots of people across social media have been very triggered by this next topic that I'm going to go on to, which is, do we have the right manager? I am all for being critical of people. I'm all for being congratulatory of people as well. And you cannot deny Farke got 90 points last season. In 99.9% of all of the seasons, we get up. There's no troubles. We get up. We're first. At the very least, we're second. So we did have it was an anomaly. And there are frustrating things about Farke. And there are brilliant things about Farke. His man management, the way that he seems to have got the best out of Daniel James. And we all know that I have a bit of a soft spot for Daniel James. But he is frustrating. His subs are late. His subs are often predictable and reactive. So I'm not going to deny the fact that he has qualities which I wish that he himself would work on, because I think that they can hamper us. I don't think he has great in-game management. I think often if his tactics don't work, then we struggle. When his tactics work, we look brilliant. But then that's all the players. That's never the manager's tactics. That's just the players. But I don't think he gets as much grace period. But I don't think the 49ers will sack him this year. I think even if we don't get, or it looks like we're not going to get top 2, I don't think they'll pull the plug. I think if he goes, I think he goes at the end of the season. as long as he gets us in playoffs, I think they'll stay with him. Now, obviously, if it's December and we are low mid-table, there is a genuine call for a conversation, because if that's the case, he's not the man. And he doesn't have this romantic, we don't have this romantic attachment with Farke that we did with Bielsa. There's a hell of a lot more expectation on Daniel Farke. And I think that the comparison to Bielsa is a lot of the time quite ridiculous, because they are completely different styles of football. We were just happy to have him back, whereas Farke has signed a 4-year deal. So when Bielsa's second season, we were so relieved that we didn't have to go through the kind of the grind of finding yet another manager, that we kind of welcomed him back. We saw the most beautiful football that, let's face it, almost a generation of fans had seen. And we were just grateful that we got to see it again. And we'd already been in the Championship for, well, not the Championship, but out of the Premier League for 15 years at that point. So we didn't necessarily have anything to lose, whereas this time we do. We've got players to lose. We've got financial responsibilities, which will then limit, if we were to stay in the Championship, we would be limited with what we could get in. Again, we'd have to balance the books. There's a lot more expectation on Farke. Flip side, he's got a better squad. But most of these players haven't actually succeeded in the Premier League. So some of them may be classed as Premier League players, Rodon, Solomon, but they haven't necessarily succeeded. Solomon has been mainly through injury, granted, but Ampadu hasn't succeeded. Rodon hasn't succeeded. Dan James, when he was at Scum, wasn't really utilised very well there, and then obviously was played as a number 9 under Bielsa, and then we shipped him out. Aronson didn't succeed in the Premier League. So all of these things, we say that we've got Premier League players, but most of these Premier League players got relegated either with us or another team. So are they really Premier League quality if we're going to use that comparison against Bielsa? Just something to think about when you're constantly making the comparison between Bielsa and Farke. Is yes, he does have better players, or at least more expensive players. But as we've seen with Chelsea, with Man U, more expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. We've seen it ourselves. Is Aronson better than what we already had before? Was Rutter a £35 million player? No, he wasn't, and he still isn't. So just because somebody's got an expensive price tag on them doesn't necessarily mean that their quality is better. You can also get some diamonds for cheap as well. Anyway, moving on to the next one of do I believe, and by this, do I believe that we're going to be promoted automatically? Yes, I do. I don't think that Farke has the excuse of it being an anomaly season. I don't believe these players have the excuse of being inexperienced, because actually a lot of these players do have experience, just maybe not in this league. I think Farke obviously is joint top manager when it comes to winning the Championship. So he's done it before. Another reason why I don't believe that we should get anybody else right now. Who else are you going to get that has proven qualities in this level, at this level? So I believe in Farke, I believe in the players, I believe in the 49ers. Doesn't mean I'm not going to question them, doesn't mean I'm not going to get annoyed when things don't go the way that I want them to go for my club. But it does mean that I have faith in them, because I prefer to be positive, I prefer to be calm, I prefer to just be happy about things, because there's so many things in the world to be miserable about. And Leeds United does get my blood pressure right up there. So if I can enjoy football and not worry and just believe that we're going to get there, as long as we keep on going on that upwards trajectory, I believe. I have faith. that will be everything for me today. And finally, if you do agree, disagree, any suggestions for any future videos, then please pop them in the comments below. I would like to say a massive thank you if you have managed to stick around for 30 minutes, which is quite long considering it's my first ever recording. But I thought if I give you a bumper episode, it's kind of like 5 minutes for every month that I've been promising to make a video. So if that's the case, then actually it's just not that long at all. So thank you very much for joining me, and hope to see you soon. Bye.